Hi folks, thanks very much for joining me for this week's river tutorial. What you see in the vise is a fly I call the snow goat. That'll become much more apparent as we start tying. So without further ado, let's get into it. The hook in the vise then is a Hanak H130 barbless hook. It's at size 12 and it's on a fine wire in black nickel. The thread I'm going to be using today is the Veevus. This is the GSP, it's at 30 denier. And the first thing I'm going to do, as I always do with the Veevus, is add a little bit of super glue to the shank of the hook. Just the tiniest bit to make sure I get the thread bedded down. Wax just doesn't cut it with this silk, so that's why I'm using the super glue. Now I've gone about half an inch down and I've come back so that I'm about 1/4 of an inch from the eye of the hook, and I'm going to remove my waste piece. Now the snow goat, I know it sounds mental, it is a bit mental, but the reason I call it that is because it incorporates snowshoe. This is a vastly underrated material as far as I'm concerned. I really like it. I know a lot of people can't be bothered with it, they don't think it's very effective, but this is a natural one, and I'm going to take a small selection of the hair off it. Now I've got it here in my hands. You don't get very many long fibres, so it's quite a bulky material. You'll notice that there's a lot of material here at the front, and I'm going to have to deal with that in some way. But at the minute, my main concern is getting it onto the hook. This is going to be the wing, so I'm going to hold it in place there and just capture that in with 2 or 3 turns. Now once I've got it in with 2 or 3 turns, I'm going to pull it all back and I'm going to come in front for 2 or 3 turns. Then I can let it go once more, and the next thing I'm going to do is try and get rid of some of this bulk. Now I want to not get rid of it in a oneer, but try and create a small taper, so when I bring my silk down I've got a tapered body. Excuse the fingers, it is a bit of a pernickety operation, but we'll get there. There we go. So I've reduced the bulk, and what I'm going to do now is use my thread to initially just get it all into a workable position, and then I'm going to come back up and really clamp down on it so that I get that nice thin taper, and that's pretty good. Just lift that up, make sure I've got plenty of room at the front. That's looking not too bad. So next, my tailing fibres. I'm using some Coq de Leon. This one's from Troutline, and I've already got a feather that I've been working with here. The thing with the Coq de Leon is it's lovely and thin, especially for dry flies and small nymphs. So I'm going to select about half a dozen fibres, and when I dress it up I want it to be about the length of the body, and then I'm going to catch that in just there. And then as I come to the back of the fly, I'm going to quickly loop underneath my tailing fibres and then tighten up ever so slightly just to get them feathers to cock up a bit more than that. There we go. Then I can come in and remove, don't want to cut any of my snowshoe away, the waste of the tailing. So that's looking pretty good so far. Next then, I'm going to add my body, and what I'm going to be using is some African goat dubbing. Now this has got very, very similar qualities to seal's fur. So it's got that springy, dry fly type sort of look to it. And I know I'm going to have trouble dubbing with it. So what I've got is some Vineyards tacky wax. I'm going to load up my thread with a little bit of that. You don't want big chunks of it on, but you definitely want a little bit of that tacky wax on. It really helps. So I've already taken a little bit out of the packet that I've got here. As you can see, looks very similar to seal's fur. It's maybe a little bit finer is what I would say, and maybe a wee bit easier to work with than seal's fur. But all I'm doing is just dubbing it on now, like so. Now I've still got some in my fingers, just in case I need some more, but I'm happy enough with that to start with. So I'm going to come up the body of the fly, making sure all that white's covered, and that's looking okay. Tilt it back, yeah, not too bad. Now next I've got a black cock hackle cape here, and I've already picked a little cock hackle from the cape. Now what I want to do is, I've got the stalk there, but I need it to be a little bit longer than that, so I'm just going to strip that back, and I'm going to pull. All my wings going to come back, and I want to just catch in, and it's going to be difficult for you to see, but I see my stalk and I want to just catch it in at the front here. Perfect. Then a little bit more of my goat. And I don't need very much because this is just for the front of the hook. It's just enough to cock that snowshoe up. So I'm going to come in and catch that in. Okay, that's starting to look like a dry fly now. And the next thing I've got to do is grab my hackle pliers, and what I want is 3 turns this side of my wing, this side, and on the 3rd turn I'm going to come underneath the body, just cock that wing out the way with my fingers, and I'm now in front of the wing. So you can see what's happening is that's standing up kind of like a post actually. Then 3 turns in front, I can then come around with my silk and catch in that hackle. I'm going to pull it all back, and then once I'm content, that can just pull away. Get everything back out the way. Now at this point, if you want, you can colour your thread with a black marker or a red marker, yellow, whatever takes your fancy really. I'm going to leave mine white. So before I come in with a whip finish tool actually, I just want to add a little bit of UV resin to the thread, which is going to finish that off for me, rather than trying to go in with varnish or super glue once the fly's finished. That would be quite difficult. So a 3 turn whip finish. Come in with your snips, and then I can cure that off. Now, one more thing before it's ready for the box, I like to tap that down, and this will float well for you on light tippet, but just to help it along before it goes in the box, I always like to treat it with some muslin. So just the wing, come in with my brush, and then put that to the side to dry, and then it goes into my box, and when I'm ready to go fishing, I don't need to worry about treating it by the riverbank because that time is precious. It's tied on and it's cast out, and that makes a great little anything black coming off it. This works really well. I hope you got something out of that. Don't ever discount Snowshoe. It's a great material. If you can get your hands on some, give it a go. Thanks very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please think about clicking that button there. I'd really appreciate your support.